Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your chosen sources and really get to the heart of what matters.
That's the goal.
So, you wanted us to explore Chapter 12 of Sun Tzu's The Art of War. The focus is the attack by fire. And, well, what key themes pop out, and do these ancient ideas actually, hold up today?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fascinating chapter because, okay, it talks specifically about fire as a tactic, but it also digs into some really fundamental parts of strategy that, well, they still resonate.
The Art of War, right. Everyone's heard of it. Sun Tzu, ancient China, a classic.
It is, though, the history around Sun Tzu himself, and even when the book was written, there's some debate there. The Chi mentions him serving Wu maybe around the 5th century BC.
But the Sun Tzu, which is from around that time, doesn't mention him at all, right?
Exactly. And the text itself talks about the rivalry between Wu and Ye, which really heated up a bit later. So the exact timing is tricky, but look, the strategic insights, they've definitely lasted.
No doubt about that. And when you first hear attack by fire, it sounds, I don't know, very literal, maybe a bit old-fashioned.
Sure, it's straightforward.
But digging into it, it's clear the principles are much wider. It's really about targeted action, isn't it? Exploiting weak spots, understanding the conditions for success.
That's it, precisely. It's more than just arson.
Okay, so let's dive into the specifics. Sun Tzu lays out 5 ways to use fire. What's the first one?
The first is burning soldiers in their camp. And the text gives a really vivid example, actually. Pan Chao's night attack on the Xingnu.
Oh, right. That's a great illustration.
It is. It details how Pan Chao used the wind crucially to spread the fire, while his other troops were making noise, drumming and yelling, creating a diversion from behind.
So chaos from 2 directions.
Exactly. Then they ambushed the Xingnu as they tried to escape through the gate. Total rout. Killed the envoy, many soldiers. It shows how fire wasn't just destructive, it created this window of chaos for a decisive strike.
Yeah, the fire itself wasn't the whole plan. It was the catalyst, the tool to cause panic and wreck their formation. Okay, so method 1, burn the soldiers. What about the next few? Burning stores, baggage trains, arsenals.
Right, methods 2, 3, and 4. Stores, baggage trains, and arsenals or magazines. These feel quite linked.
They do seem focused on the same sort of thing.
Yeah, they're all about weakening the enemy by hitting their resources, their ability to keep fighting. You're attacking their logistics.
Their lifeline, essentially.
Exactly. Think about modern militaries, or even big companies today. They rely so heavily on complex supply chains. A targeted hit, maybe not literal fire, but say a cyber attack on a key logistics hub.
Ah, okay. That could cripple them just as much as burning a baggage train back then.
Precisely. The underlying idea is identical. Attack what keeps the enemy going. Hit their support structure.
That makes a lot of sense. Shifting from just fighting soldiers to attacking the system that supports them. Okay, and the 5th method, dropping fire amongst the enemy.
Yeah, this one sounds a bit different. Less about destroying supplies, maybe more about disruption, sowing fear directly within the ranks.
Injecting chaos right into their lines. You can imagine the psychological effect, right? Fire suddenly breaking out here and there in your formation.
Absolutely. It breaks communication, cohesion, hits morale hard. But, Sun Tzu doesn't just say, go light some fires. He's very clear about when you should do this.
Right.
There are conditions.
Right. Conditions are key. First, he says you need the means, the implements. You can't just decide to do it without the right tools and preparation.
Very practical. You need the equipment.
Mm.
But maybe even more critical, he insists these attacks shouldn't happen in isolation. He talks about waiting for developments.
So like opportunities, things the enemy does that open a window.
That seems to be the idea. Specific weaknesses or vulnerabilities that appear because of the enemy's actions or position. It makes the fire attack a strategic choice, not just, a random act of violence.
It ties back to that quote, doesn't it? There should be no movement unless there is something to be gained.
No activity unless there's something to be accomplished. No attacking unless the position is critical. Yes, that nails it. It's about seizing the right moment, having a clear purpose.
Not just acting for the sake of acting. And then, of course, the obvious things like weather, dry conditions, the wind direction.
You need nature on your side, or at least not working against you. You don't want the wind blowing the flames back onto your own troops. Pan Chao used the wind, remember.
Crucial element. Okay, so that's how and when to use fire. What if you're on the receiving end? Does he give advice for that?
He does. If fire breaks out in your own camp, the first thing is
Yeah.
stay calm, remain quiet, keep order, don't panic.
Easier said than done, I imagine, but vital.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Then, if the fire gets serious, you obviously have to fight to contain it.
Yeah.
And here's an interesting bit. If the enemy attacks your position with fire and then pulls back,
Yes.
you should follow up if you can. Pursue them if possible. But, and this is important, don't launch a full counterattack if they're clearly withdrawing in good order.
Ah, because it could be a trap. They might be trying to lure you out.
Exactly. It comes back to that cool-headed assessment. Don't react impulsively, even when you've just been attacked. Assess the situation.
Always thinking strategically, even under, well, fire. Sun Tzu also says every army needs to understand these 5 fire-related developments. It's fundamental knowledge.
Not just for the general, but for everyone. And he also mentions calculating the movements of the stars and observing proper days.
Which sounds a bit mystical, maybe? Or is it practical?
It likely ties into ancient ways of predicting weather, maybe finding auspicious moments based on cycles they observed. It's about trying to align your actions with, well, the patterns of the world, however they understood them, finding the right time.
Like understanding the seasons for planting, but for warfare.
Sort of,
Yeah.
yeah. And speaking of observation, there's that curious note about wind.
Oh, yeah, the daytime versus nighttime wind. A wind that rises in the daytime lasts long, but a night breeze soon falls.
Right. And the text even admits the reason isn't clear, but it's presented as just practical knowledge, a tactical rule of thumb learned through experience.
We don't know why, but trust us, this is how wind usually works.
Pretty much. It's grounded in observation. So, thinking about all this,
Yeah.
how did these core ideas land today? We're probably not advising armies to burn enemy camps often.
Probably not standard procedure, no. But the underlying principles, they feel surprisingly modern, actually.
How so?
Well, that idea of a focused attack to create chaos and exploit a vulnerability, that's everywhere. Think about cyber warfare.
Ah, good example. Targeting critical infrastructure.
Exactly. The goal isn't always physical destruction, is it? It's disruption, creating panic, instability, undermining the ability to function. That sounds a lot like what a well-placed fire attack aimed to do.
Or information warfare. Using disinformation to sow confusion, erode trust. That's another kind of fire. Creating chaos in the enemy's decision-making or public support.
True. It's about attacking the coherence of the enemy and the emphasis on planning, having the means, waiting for the right moment, the right conditions.
That feels universal. Whether it's a military operation or, I don't know, launching a new product in business. You need the resources, the plan, and crucially, the right timing. A poorly timed attack on a market can fail just as badly as a premature military assault.
Preparation and timing, still fundamental. And the advice on how to respond to a fire attack. Stay calm, assess, don't get lured into traps.
That sounds exactly like modern crisis management, doesn't it?
It really does. Whether it's a PR disaster, a market crash, a supply chain issue, the worst thing you can usually do is panic.
Right. Maintaining stability, thinking strategically before reacting emotionally. That's key to navigating any crisis. So it's interesting, after this deep dive into fire, the chapter doesn't just end there.
No, it shifts gears a bit, moving to other broader warnings, like that really strong caution against acting without a clear upside.
Move not unless you see an advantage, quote again.
Use not your troops unless there is something to be gained. Fight not unless the position is critical. It's such a powerful statement about not wasting resources or effort.
Yeah, avoiding pointless actions. It's all about strategic resource allocation, isn't it? In business, diplomacy, even just managing your own time and energy. Focus where it counts.
And then there's the warning about the commander's temper.
Ah, yes, the easily irritated general. Sun Tzu warns that losing your cool leads to rash, disastrous decisions. Chao Kung uses that simile of swarming ants just throwing troops away in ill-planned assaults out of frustration.
It really speaks to emotional intelligence and leadership, doesn't it? Keeping a level head under pressure.
Essential. Anger is a poor strategic advisor.
He also gives some specific tactical advice like, don't attack an enemy on ground or they can easily retreat.
Because they won't be fully committed, perhaps. And
Right.
don't press a desperate enemy too hard.
Right, the cornered animal idea. They'll fight with unexpected ferocity if they have absolutely nothing left to lose.
So it's about understanding the enemy's situation and psychology, too. Don't create unnecessary problems for yourself by pushing them past a certain point or attacking where they won't stand and fight properly.
Okay, so wrapping up chapter 12. The core message seems to be about the smart, calculated use of specific tactics like fire, but only under the right conditions, and always prioritizing thoughtful, objective-driven action over impulse or anger.
Exactly. It uses the attack by fire as a case study almost to illustrate these wider, timeless principles of strategy: timing, planning, resource management, knowing when not to act, and understanding your opponent.
So where do we go next? What's chapter 13?
Chapter 13 is titled The Use of Spies. A very logical next step, I think.
From open attack to covert operations.
Precisely. It moves from the principles of engaging the enemy, like with fire, to the absolute necessity of knowing the enemy through intelligence gathering.
How does it frame that?
It actually opens with a really stark point about how incredibly expensive it is to maintain a large army, the drain on resources, the disruption to the people. And then it argues that spending money on espionage, on spies, is actually a huge saving, because good intelligence allows you to achieve victory more efficiently, potentially avoiding those massive costs of prolonged warfare.
So information is not just power, it's value for money.
In a strategic sense, yes. It highlights the immense value of knowing what the enemy is planning, their strengths, their weaknesses.
And I remember seeing it details different types of spies.
It does. It outlines 5 classes: local spies, inward spies, converted spies, doomed spies, and surviving spies, each with a different role in the intelligence network.
Sounds intricate. Does it talk about managing them?
Oh, yes. It stresses the need to reward them well, very well, in fact, and the absolute paramount importance of secrecy, keeping the whole network secure.
So we're moving from the heat of battle, quite literally with the fire attacks, into the shadows of espionage.
From direct force to the crucial role of information. Knowing your enemy is key before you can effectively apply force, or perhaps even avoid applying it altogether.
That sets up an interesting thought then, doesn't it? As we leave Chapter 12's focus on targeted action, like fire, and look towards Chapter 13's focus on intelligence, how do those two concepts work together today?
Focused action and information gathering.
Yeah. Think about it in, any complex situation, professional or even personal. How does knowing the situation deeply through good information enable you to take more precise, effective action, like Sun Tzu's carefully planned fire attacks? Where do you see those ancient ideas of targeted force and deep intelligence playing out now?
That's a really good connection to ponder, the synergy between knowing and doing.
Yeah.
Definitely something to think about.